Hey, Dr. Doan here. Today I'm going to talk about earthing and grounding and dirty electricity. Explain to you what dirty electricity is, how that can impact your human health, and also how to alleviate it in the home. Ready? Let's get started. What is dirty electricity? It's actually a misnomer because electricity is electricity. However, dirty electricity is commonly used for interference or high frequency noise or harmonics that are detected in the electrical lines. They are commonly caused by electrical equipment and also poor wiring or old wiring in the home, as well as even things like hair dryers. Let's look at this clip where I use an oscilloscope to look at the quality of the electricity in my home. All right, let's go through the equipment that I have. I have a grounding earthing mattress cover from the company Earthing. It covers our entire king-size bed. Now keep in mind that the larger the mat that you have, the more of an effect you will see with dirty electricity as well as with this EMF induction I'm going to show you. I have a grounding cable to the earth outside via stake. This wire here grounds the voltmeter, but that's also goes outside to the stake. There's two wires you see that leads to the window, goes out there, and there's two shallow 1 foot long grounding stakes that I bought from Earthing. That is an earthing cable that's connected to the mat itself. I just put this here to insulate the ground from the mat because I'm going to show you what it's going to be like when the mat is ungrounded. This is my oscilloscope. I will have this in the link below, so if you want to test it yourself, you can get it. This oscilloscope comes with a probe and it's grounded to the outlet here. This is just a ground splitter, and using an alligator clip I'm able to ground safely without sticking this clip into the outlet itself. I'm just using a outlet strip here that you can see that's properly grounded. I also have a hair dryer connected to this so I can show you the dirty electricity can be generated with a hair dryer. Okay, let's hook up the oscilloscope to the live wire of this outlet to see the pattern of electricity that shows up. This is a sine wave indicative of alternating current. It is running at a frequency of 60 Hertz. In the US, elsewhere around the world, it can be 50 Hertz. So that's why you see 50/60 Hertz electricity. You see that the sine wave is nice and steady and constant, and there's no disturbances. But let's see what happens when we turn on a hair dryer. So my house is actually pretty clean. So even though this hair dryer is hooked up to this outlet, there's not much of disturbance. Keep in mind that my oscilloscope is not an expensive oscilloscope. These oscilloscopes can run anywhere from a few $100s all the way up to thousands of dollars. And so my scope may not be sensitive enough to measure the slight fluctuations. So for our purposes, we want to see if there's a huge amount or significant amount of electricity being introduced into the system. And so even with the hair dryer, there's not a lot of disturbance in this electrical system. So one, I know my house because I've tested it. It's a very good grounded outlets. And then two, the wiring in this modern home is really good. But not all homes are like this. Some homes will, when you turn on the hair dryer, for example, you will see huge disturbances in the sine wave. And that's indicative of what they call dirty electricity, which is basically harmonics and introduction of leaky electricity into the ground and also into the electrical system of your outlets. Now that's problematic when we're grounding, and I'm going to get to that. Let's focus on the voltmeter, and notice that this voltmeter is grounded to a grounding cord that goes outside to the earth. The other probe here is the positive lead, and all I'm doing is touching the positive lead to the grounding mat. At 60 Hertz or 59.9 Hertz, which is electrical energy from modern wiring and electrical systems, this mat is drawing or emitting 6.93 volts of alternating current. The amazing thing is that this voltage is being emitted from the mat when it's not even connected to anything. This mat is not grounded at this point. So an improperly grounded earthing mat or sheet will emit electricity. And you don't want an extra 6+ alternating current voltage running through your body while you're sleeping. And I'm just wondering if this is the reason why people are having problems, and that's why I'm making this video. Let's see what happens when we ground the earthing mat. This is just a cable that goes outside my window into a stake into the ground. It went from over 6 volts to now about 120 millivolts alternating current. That is a significant change. So let's see what happens to my body voltage when I touch an ungrounded earthing mat. So I just disconnected my earthing mat, so it's no longer grounded. I'm measuring my body voltage in reference to the earth outside, and I am now showing more than 8.6 volts of alternating current at 59.9 hertz. That is electrical voltage, energy, surging through my body. So let me touch the mat that is not grounded and see what happens. It goes up. Not touching the mat. Touch an ungrounded mat, it goes up to over 9.2 volts alternating current. It is important to emphasize that an improperly grounded or not grounded bed mat, sheet, or any grounding device can actually add electrical currents into your body. So it's absolutely important to make sure those things are grounded before using them. I'm the administrator for the Earthing and Grounding Forum that's now almost 50,000 people in that forum. And as a physician, I learned that if there's a common complaint over and over and over again, instead of just disregarding that as being a weird reaction, as a detox reaction, or the person has these invalid complaints, I start looking at, are these things real? Are these complaints real things? I think they are. There are enough people who are grounding properly, who are healthy, but they suffer from headaches, fatigue, muscle aches, insomnia, and all these vague problems that we see when people are exposed to electrical EMFs. So what's interesting is that if grounding and earthing is essential to mitigate the effects of electrical EMFs, which is seen as electrical alternating currents and voltage in the human body, therefore, if we're using a grounding device that introduces extra alternating currents onto the body, we're gonna see some ailments and illnesses and complaints. So that's when I started looking at this, and I got an oscilloscope in order to test the grounding mat. And as you can see, my grounding mat or mattress cover, if not grounded, will actually draw and generate alternating currents that is 60 hertz, which is the electrical energy that's in the electrical wiring. So let's ground this mat and see what happens when I touch the mat. So ungrounded, I'm over 8 volts alternating current. Touch the mat, I go down to 266 millivolts, which is great. Let's try grounding the mat via the electrical outlet. So ungrounded, I'm over 8 volts alternating current. Grounded through the socket or electrical outlet of the home, I'm down to 270 millivolts or so. It is equivalent to grounding with a stake outside. My house is wired in a way that is actually the same if I use the outlet or a stake outside. So that is how you can compare your outlets versus a grounding stake outside, and if they are equivalent, you know that your grounding mat is working. And mine is working. I'm having incredible health benefits, and I really have done it for over 5 years now, almost 6. I'm a big believer of earthing and grounding because it actually mitigates the alternating current electricity that runs through the human body, because we're surrounded by EMF, electrical EMF, that are extremely low frequency at 50 to 60 hertz. Okay, so let's look at the waveform. So this is an ungrounded mat. The mat's not grounded. I connected the oscilloscope to the mat itself, and it's grounded to the outlet here. The mat, ungrounded, is actually emitting over 1.3 volts of a sine wave that's indicative of alternating current at 60 hertz. Let's see what happens when we ground the mat. When we ground the mat, the voltage meter shows a dramatic decrease in the voltage alternating current that is being measured to about 122 millivolts, and the sine wave of the alternating current is now flatlined. My oscilloscope is not sensitive enough to measure any frequency in hertz. Notice though, the hertz as being measured by the voltmeter is about 120 hertz. This is not the typical alternating current electrical energy that's being induced by electrical wiring and electronic equipment in our homes, because that's running at 60 hertz in my home. This is actually twice that amount, and it's higher frequency. Being exposed to higher frequency can also be harmful, but it all depends on how much you're getting. So personally, and also from my experience from the earthing and grounding forum, I know that people who are exposed to this type of frequency, meaning 100 or so millivolts at 120 hertz, is less harmful than if I was exposed to, let's say, 3 volts or 3000 millivolts of alternating current at 60 hertz all night long. I feel a dramatic health difference with earthing and grounding, and if you haven't seen my video, I recommend you watching this video here, where I talk about the scientific basis of why earthing and grounding heals. We've ungrounded the mat again. You can see that the sine wave is now present of the alternating current that's now emitted by the mat, as well as the voltage of the mat has increased to now over 4.6 volts alternating current at 59.9 hertz. So let's see what happens when we turn on the hairdryer. Notice how the mat absorbs some of that, what you call dirty electricity or harmonics or spillover from the hairdryer onto the mat. And so the peak of the sine waves increased. The voltage went from 4.6 volts to now about 6.4 volts onto the mat. This is an ungrounded mat. So let's see what happens when we ground it. When we ground it, you can see that the sine wave is obliterated. There's no frequency being measured here, and the alternating current decreased down to 170 millivolts, which is actually equivalent to when there was not any hair dryer or just the mat by itself. Grounded, the voltmeter only measures 172 millivolts and also at 119 hertz. So if you have a properly grounded mat, it will take care of that extra energy that surrounds you, that is referred to as the so-called dirty electricity, which is really spillover from the other appliances, electrical equipment in your home, maybe poor wiring, the wiring in your home. So it's just extra current that's being introduced to the earthing mat from your surroundings. But a properly grounded mat, which this one is, takes care of the extra dirty electricity that was generated from this hairdryer. This mat is not connected to anything and is throwing out alternating current voltage. However, when the mat is properly grounded, we can see that the alternating currents that are measured in the mats are significantly diminished. So let me emphasize that the ground checker that comes with your earthing and grounding mat is not sufficient to determine if your house is actually wired sufficiently for human grounding. We definitely know there are significant health benefits to proper earthing and grounding. However, because this field is so new, we're just plugging to anything that we can in order to earth and ground, but that may not be helpful, because when you're exposed to EMFs, you'll have headaches, fatigue, muscle aches, insomnia, mood changes, all these weird ailments. We see people actually heal because the EMF induction of alternating currents is mitigated when the human body is properly earthed and grounded. However, when we tap into an outlet that is not properly grounded sufficiently for human grounding, that is when I believe we are seeing problems. Because I've been following this discussion forum on Facebook for over 5 years now. There's now 50,000 people, and when there are hundreds of people complaining about this, this is a significant thing that I need to address so that people will know how to ground themselves properly. So first off, if you want to ground by the outlet, you have to test the outlet quality. So I go through that in this video so that you can actually learn how to check your outlets properly. So in order to do this properly, you need to invest into a voltmeter and watch this video here, and I walk you through that process on how to determine your body voltage drop with your earthing product. In this video, I did show you a method in which you can use to determine if your outlet is the same as grounding to the earth outside. So I showed you that when I check my body voltage drop with the stake outside, it is similar to the body voltage drop that I see with the outlet inside the house. So therefore, I know that the outlet inside the house drops my body voltage adequately and therefore is properly ground. I also tested my outlets and I know that there's low resistance from the outlet to the earth outside. And I show that in this video here. Number two, You can also use an oscilloscope to look at the quality of your ground and your electrical system in your home. So you can detect if there's a lot of dirty electricity or these harmonics or high frequency fluctuations. But if that's beyond your technical expertise, I would just say go to step number 3. Step number 3 is simply connect your earthing and grounding product with a stake outside. There's 2 ways that you can do this. One, you can buy a 4-foot to 6-foot copper grounding rod from Amazon and just drive that into the ground and then connect the wire all the way to your earthing product. The second way you can do is buy a outside earthing rod from the company Earthing, and you can also have a 40-foot cable that comes along with that kit, and you can connect your earthing and grounding product to that stake. So here are the takeaways. Not all homes are adequately wired for safe human grounding because of stray electricity, fluctuations, electrical spikes, increased current in the ground wire, also known as dirty electricity. Improperly grounded and ungrounded mats and sheets can actually cause more harm because they are inducing more alternating currents through the human body. So you absolutely have to make sure your earthing product is properly grounded. Test your homes and outlets. Invest into a multimeter and oscilloscope. If that's too much, hire a professional who also knows about earthing and grounding to also test your outlets in your home. Use proper grounding for all grounding devices, and if in doubt, always use a stake outside and connect your grounding devices to the outside stake. But you still have to check the stake and make sure that it's properly grounded as well. Thank you for joining me today, and if you enjoyed my video, please like, share, and comment. Also, please subscribe so that you won't miss any future videos. Until next time, I wish you health and joy. Have a great day.